Okay, looks like we have a quorum. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. I will announce that we have a new member in District 2, Michael Caslow. Just voted in tonight. And if we could just have Michael and Patrick Keene quickly stand for the oath. Raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully discharge according to law your duties as members of the representative town meeting to the best of your ability, so help you God? Thank you. Okay. We have one more to go. District 1 needs one more person. We have 99. Very exciting. Okay. As this is my last meeting, because I am retiring the end of this month, I wanted to introduce Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure, and I've met a lot of amazing people along the way, for sure. But I would like to introduce my replacement, our new town clerk, as of January 6th, Karen Diller. And I'm very pleased. She's going to be great. She's been in the office for 15 years. She knows you guys and the program. So now I will turn it over to Seth.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Without objection, I will accept the agenda as distributed. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 12? So moved. And second, please. Corrections, additions, thoughts. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions, if you weren't here, you can register them with the clerk. Tonight, I'm going to ask your forbearance to add an item to the agenda. And we generally don't read resolutions. We ask to be forgiven. But in this case, I'd like to read the following. Resolution of the Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Darien. Whereas Donna Rajczewski is a fourth-generation Darien native, she graduated from Darien High School, as did her daughters Lee and Dana. Donna went on to graduate from Beaver College in Pennsylvania, known as Arcadia University, where she had a stellar career on the field hockey team and softball fields. And whereas Donna is extremely proud of and dedicated to her hometown, she has been a very active member of the community and her church. She was a teacher early in her career at Norotan Presbyterian and the First Congregational Church nursery schools, where she helped mold many young children into fine adults. And whereas Donna has served her town since 1996, first in the Planning and Zoning Department and then the Town Clerk's office. In November 1999, she was elected to her first of 10 terms as Town Clerk and earned the status of Certified Municipal Clerk. During her tenure as Town Clerk, she has served with 4 First Selectmen. And whereas Donna has served the Representative Town Meeting for 20 years, during which time she has kept abreast of state regulations governing the town of Darien to ensure that deadlines are met and that resolutions conform to state law. She has worked with the First Selectman, town departments, town commissions and committees, the RTM moderator, town council, district chairs, and RTM committees. Donna has exhibited caring dexterity, coordinating the complex day-to-day activities of the town clerk's office and the RTM. By using her ability to multitask efficiently, she has made outstanding contributions to the smooth operations of the town of Darien. Now, therefore, the representative town meeting of the town of Darien does hereby, upon her retirement, express deep gratitude for 20 years of dedicated service to Donna Rajczewski, town clerk, and asks our residents to join us in recognizing her accomplishments, dedication, and loyal service to them and to the town of Darien. Dated the 9th day of December, Seth W. Morton, moderator. May I have a may I have a motion in favor, please? So moved. May I have a second? All in favor, please rise. Donna?
Thank you. I'm overwhelmed. And as I say, I've enjoyed it tremendously, and I've met some awfully nice people, and I think the town's in great hands. Thank you very much for this. It means so much.
I must say I had some co-conspirators. Karen Dunn helped me write it. She knew some things that I didn't know about Donna. Jamie Stevenson and Linda O'Leary and Karen Diller helped put the assembly together there, the picture, and co-editors were Lois Schneider and Monica McNally. Thank you for your help, ladies, very much. Announcements. On January 6th, there will be a reception at the Mather Center for Donna at 4:30 p.m. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. You guys kept those hidden so long. Please come forward, my two co-conspirators here. Come, Donna. Thanks, guys. Got ahead of myself. So January 6th, a reception at Mather Center at 4:30 for Donna. Now on to the business of the state of the town. The chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Jeremy? Yeah, Steve Mulvaney, I'm sorry.
Good evening, folks. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, fellow elected officials, and town, the Darien community here and at home on TV 7 and 9. Good evening, everyone. I am Stephen Mulvaney. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I was recently elected as chair. I'm very excited for this position and for the challenges that it does bring forth to me. Before I commence with my update, I would like to extend my thanks to my fellow commissioners for all their hard work and dedication. Since last year, 3 new members have left the P&Z, which is John Cini, who's now on the Board of Education, Kevin Cunningham, who now serves on the Police Commission, and Liz Riva, who now can spend more time with her kids at home. She chases them around a lot. I want to thank them for their hard work and service to the community and formally welcome our new members, Kara Gately, who may be here tonight, George Riley, and Larry Warble. These 3 new members are going to bring new light and energy to the commission, and we look forward to that. I want to thank John, Kevin, Liz for the recent work that they, as well as the 3 other current members, have done on updating our zoning regulations. We looked hard at this last year, and this is something we did last year as a natural outgrowth of the 2016 Town Plan of Conservation Development. We were able to clarify and streamline some of the zoning regulations, as they relate to food uses and commercial zones in town. We were responsive to comments we received relative to making the regulations simpler and having fewer commercial districts. We also addressed some of the issues at the suggestion of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We believe that the hard work that we put into these new regulations will have a significant beneficial impact to the development and redevelopment in the town going forward. The first topic I'd like to speak to tonight is the role that the Planning and Zoning Commission plays. Our commission is just one of 4 local land use groups or land use boards that have a role in development and redevelopment of town. I call them real estate boards. These include the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Environmental Protection Commission, and the Architectural Review Board. Over the next few weeks, and I have in the past, I'll be reaching out to the chairman of each of these boards to discuss our common roles and to thank them for their work in this team effort. In my 6.5-year tenure on the Planning and Zoning Commission and my former tenure on the Board of Zoning Appeals, I realized that the boards together play an essential part in redeveloping the community and making Darien what it is today. I see our job is to keep a good balance of development and redevelopment and the currently existing small New England town character of Darien. The Planning and Zoning Commission would like to also see Darien have a strong downtown and walkable districts. Second, I want to touch on some of the redevelopment that has occurred within the past year or so. In reading Chairman Steeny's speech from last year, I see that he noted the theme of change. Change in Darien occurs almost daily, but it's very gradual. Some of the projects that I will touch about in a minute have been in the planning process and development process for in excess of 10 years. We don't move fast around here. I have a quick PowerPoint showing some of the projects completed within the past year and now underway and soon to come. Some of you may be familiar with these, but I want to give you a sense of the positive economic situation that we are relative to our other local communities. Keep in mind that according to our assessor, for every $1 million in the grand list, growth comes about $12,000 in tax revenue for the town. John Zagrodzky, our excellent chairman of the Board of Finance, will discuss these types of financial mathematics in further detail in his remarks. Overall, here we go, yep. Overall, zoning permits are down compared to the past few years. The graph on the screen shows that we decreased the number of permits for the current fiscal year. See that, those permits? There's like 400 of them. There's only like 365 days a year. These guys work their tail off in that department. The next graph, this graph shows the value of the building permits since 2015. As you can see, there's been some variation in the total value over the past few years, but all of the years have resulted in well over $100 million in value constructed annually. Those are really big numbers. With that said, I would like to thank all of you in the Darien community, and all of you in the Darien community at large for investing in your properties and validating that what we are doing in Darien is the right thing. I call it, we have 3 types of projects in Darien, what the Planning Commission looks at: residential, community, and commercial. With slide number 4, the new single-family residential construction continues. We are seeing about 30 new houses constructed annually over the past few years, and this year is no different. The slide you see is a new house on 6 Outlook Lane, which is one of those beautiful streets near Beach Drive and Loud House Way right off the Post Road. Most of the new single-family residential construction is replacement housing, which is tear-downs or demolitions of existing residents and construction of new replacement residents on the same lot. As you know, since most of Darien is built out, there are very few vacant lots in town. The small 2- and 3-bedroom houses are being replaced with larger 4- to 5-bedroom houses, and which we all realize, and that's something that I know the Board of Education is monitoring, and that the board is in the process of working with their consultant on enrollment projections. The multifamily permits are quite interesting as they vary from year to year. The largest, newest multifamily project is Kensett. Kensett Phase 2 is in the process of being completed. That Phase 2 area is a redevelopment of additional vacant land off of Hoyt Street and some older homes at the end of Wakemore Street into 14 new townhouse-style large condominiums. We also received a few affordable units as part of this new development. The entire project, which includes more than 70 new units in phases 1 and 2, should be completed in 2020. I think that project started in 2006 or 2007. At an estimated average tax of $15,000 per house or unit or apartment, that adds up to over $1 million to the tax rolls. The Old Town Homes will be a new 55-unit deed-restricted apartment building. There she is. That project's been rebranded the Royal at Darien, since it was the original site of the Royal School prior to becoming Town Hall. Expected completion date of that project is sometime in the summer of 2020. Two of the private clubs in town also recently completed new construction. The Norotan Yacht Club finished a new building a few months ago in the spring. There he is. And this new building complies with all the new flood regulations that affect our town and especially near the water. The Oxford Riding and Racquet Club has also completed a new construction. Look at that. Which will allow it to focus on other activities in addition to horseback riding. As for the commercial development, there has been quite a bit recently. We talked a little bit about this one last year. Actually, no, we did. Well, maybe we might have. 320 to 330 Boston Post Road are two office buildings now being rented for office use. Yep. Many of you noticed the new facades, new landscaping, the brick was painted black, new sidewalks, and rebranding of the property. We're pleased to see that these buildings contain vibrant office users rather than lying dormant. They were mostly vacant for about 4 years. Orange Theory at 364 Post Road recently opened and has been a big success. We talked about this building last year also. The landlord has leased most of the refurbished building, and a gourmet store, Pasta Vita, will open in December and January, taking up nearly the remainder of the vacant available space. The residence at Selleck Woods is an assisted living memory care facility that was completed a few months back, probably at the beginning of the year, on Parklands Drive. Yep. That is about 100 beds and was also a vacant Class B office building that was about 60,000 square feet. In our town, we have a number of new businesses established since this time last year. They're too numerous to name all of them, but some of them include, you got them there? Flower, Water, Salt Bakery, Bonhon Hair Salon, Hollow Tree Self-Storage, Cafe Nero, J. McLaughlin, and now Shoes and More. Now for the big stuff. All of you heard by now and saw presentations to the previous RTM meeting in October. Three major developments are about to get underway. The first step in the Federal Realty project, which is the Stop and Shop in Norotan Heights, is the construction of a new Walgreens building between the existing Walgreens and Equinox. That work, which I'm going to call Phase 1, will occur now and into the fall of 2020. Significant drainage improvements will also be implemented as part of this project. According to Federal Realty's third quarter 2019 REIT filings, the projected cost of their project is $110 to $120 million. This is in addition to their initial purchase in April of 2013, and Federal's anticipated stabilization date for the project is 2023, about 10 years. They're underway, and Stop and Shop on Heights Road is going to close, sorry to say, on Thursday, December 19th. I'm also pleased to note that the new Norotan Heights shopping centers with Palmer's Road is about to get underway. That is a $40+ million project. They have all their financing is now finalized. They hired their general contractor. The logistics plans are in, and they're ready to get started. The demolition permits have been applied for with the building department, and most of the existing buildings and some of the demolishment will occur starting in January. A groundbreaking ceremony will be held on Wednesday, 2 days from now. The anticipated completion is sometime in 2022. A rendering of the final project should be there now. Here it is. Wow, we're doing good. The final redevelopment project in downtown is what was called now the Corbin District. That will get underway in the spring of 2020. The first step in that project will be the demolition of the Gulf gas station on the corner of Post Road and Corbin Drive, and the redevelopment on the east side of Corbin Drive. Changes to the buildings on the west side of Corbin Drive will get underway in 2021, 2022, after the west side is already done. I would also like to thank some of the key investors, whom of which are local residents, for investing in Darien and again validating that we are doing the right stuff in our town. On the final topic, I'd like to discuss the Planning and Zoning Commission's role in what I call, it's actually taken from another gentleman, the stewards of the grant list. Because communities get much of their tax revenue from local property taxes, it's essential that we maintain a stable grant list. I believe our grant list continues to get stronger, as evidenced by what I just stated, but the Board of Finance Chairman, John Rajczewski, will get more detail about this when he addresses the town. In conclusion, I foresee very interesting 2020 ahead. We will see the start of new construction projects in both downtown and Roden Heights. We will see the completion of Old Town Hall homes, which is now going to be called the Royal, with all their 55 new units being occupied. Our land use boards will be involved in review and permitting for a number of other projects, but not limited to, hopefully, the ultimate replacement of Oxford Elementary School and the review of the Weed Beach Meadows and Trails project, which is a follow-up from our October findings that the improvements that they plan there are generally consistent with the town plan of conservation development. The various land boards spend hours of time and effort working on application, reviewing, analyze their proposals, and we're anxious to see the fruits of our labor. These things, like I said, take years. So John Cini mentioned to you last year, we'll be going through a little discomfort in terms of construction activities, but the end result should be spectacular. New additions to both our residential and commercial tax base and new living, shopping, and dining opportunities. I hope next year I'm able to stand up here saying that all of our planning is going well and exactly as designed and as envisioned. One last thought. I can remember when Grove Street downtown, and this is when I first moved to town, was very different than what it is today. The proposed improvements for that area were considered big changes for Darien. Today, I look at it as the mini Arthur Avenue district. We have a butcher, a fish market, and a new bed breaker. I think that's cool. I think you guys should change the name. I will continue to be excited about changing I continue to be excited about the changes that are imminent and believe that will contribute to a better Darien. Thank you again for your time this evening. I look forward to working on behalf of all of you. Have a great year ahead and happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Now, Chair of Board of Education, Tara Hockman. Thank you, Tara.
I didn't get any taller. I'm sorry. Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, fellow elected officials, and all those in the community here and watching on Channel 79. On behalf of my colleagues from the Board of Education, it is my pleasure to update you on our work for children's families and the taxpayers of Darien. While I may be a familiar face at this point, I stand here again to introduce a new superintendent of schools. Last year, the board completed its highly competitive national search for a new superintendent. The amount of strongly qualified applicants is a testament to this community and its reputation for supporting strong public schools. At the end of a rigorous and thorough process, we were proud to announce that Dr. Alan Adley had accepted this essential position. Dr. Adley is a native of Northern Ireland and began his career as a mathematics teacher. He has 35 years of administrative and teaching experience in private and public schools, both here in the States and in Ireland. Before coming to Darien, Dr. Adley was superintendent in the Granby School District for 11 years. A highly respected and exceptional leader, Dr. Adley is on the governing board for the National Superintendents Association, a past president of CAPS and the Hartford Area Superintendents Association. He was the recipient of the, I'm going to mess it up, so wait for it, 2016 Yukon NEAG School of Education Outstanding School Superintendent Award, and the 2019 Connecticut Superintendent of the Year. Along with his strong resume, strength of character, and his passion for his profession, Dr. Adley stressed to the board his long-term commitment to Darien and its children. Please take a moment in the coming months to introduce yourself and get to know Alan. The board is sure that you will be pleased to have done so. Our enrollment. Currently, there are 4,656 children enrolled K through 12 in the Darien schools, with another 100 children projected by the end of the year in ELP. In our most recent enrollment study by the independent firm of Malone and McBroom, they projected out to 2029, 2030, noticing a slight decline of about 100 students by that time. As the Commissioner of Education noted when he was at a recent meeting here in Darien, we are a high-growth, high-achievement district. Our current average cost per pupil is $21,930, which has grown, but still it puts us squarely in the median range in our comparable district reference group. When we last met, the RTM approved the 2019-20 budget, and we'd like to take a moment to update you on the work that your vote has made possible. At the elementary level, we are implementing a variety of programs. First, Math in Focus, also known as Singapore Math, in grades K through 4, and this has been a very successful and well-received rollout. We have new STEM units at our elementary schools, which are facilitated by DHS students who come into the classroom to work with their younger counterparts as role models in learning. We have Wilson Foundations, which is a systematic program in critical foundational skills, emphasizing phonics, reading fluency, handwriting, and comprehension strategies. And we have implemented the responsive classroom model. Also, the addition of a second psychologist at each elementary school was an important and often discussed initiative. While we are only 3 months into the school year, early reports from building administrators show that service goals to meet student needs are being achieved. And as a board, we look forward to a comprehensive update on this initiative. We continue conversations around the state and find that we are not alone or unique in seeing a rise in requests for staffing related to mental health, especially at the primary level. At the secondary level, we are now implementing a health and wellness, social and emotional learning curriculum. Again, a new STEM program with the implementation of Project Lead the Way, and now a capstone project that will begin in 6th grade and carry with the students until their graduation for a culminating experience in 8th grade. District-wide, our students now have access to technology home from school, grades 5 through 12 for our 1-in-1 initiative, and that is a project you have heard about for years, and we greatly appreciate your support in making sure that that was fully rolled out. Students in grades K through 4 have access to technology, and it is in their classroom setting. The district is now maintaining a digital warehouse for curriculum across departments, grades K through 12, and students now have a very clear model of support for structured intervention when it is needed across English, the language arts, mathematics, and social and emotional learning, which includes benchmark assessments and a data system for content areas. We have exciting new units of study in social studies and science that are aligned to the frameworks and the next generation science standards. Teachers and administrators now participate in learning rounds as a mode of providing formative feedback to our highly qualified teachers, and we continue to invest significantly in offering the most qualified intervention staff. It's most important to note some of the impressive work of our students, and this is a brief list because I really could never probably contain it all and not let you go home at some reasonable hour. But the National Merit Program saw 9 semifinalists with 28 commended scholars. We have 65 athletic teams in 22 different sports with continued both FCAC and SEAC championships, and we may be on our way with another one tonight, depending on how our game goes. Student artists from across the district were exhibited both in local businesses and town hall from their extraordinary talented work. And Theater 308 put on an exceptional performance of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime this fall and Chicago last spring. Our Quiz Bowl students at the middle school continue to have successful championships, and our student performance across standardized and non-standardized assessments continues to be exceptional. We are proud to report that U.S. News and World Report named Darien High School the #1 public high school in Connecticut, and that Newsweek named DHS one of the 100 best STEM schools in the nation. In the new year, we will work with both the Education Committee and the Finance and Budget Committee to communicate details of a new teacher contract. At a high level, the Board of Education successfully negotiated a contract that both respects teachers and initiated significant workload changes that will provide Darien with both immediate and long-term savings. The board feels that investing in our teachers is an essential investment in our students. It allows us to attract and retain dedicated professionals. They play a vital role in the daily lives of our children, and the value of this human capital cannot be underestimated. We look forward to continuing this conversation with the RTM. The Board of Education is engaging in strategic planning, and you may be asked to participate. The board and the administration firmly believe it is time for a strategic plan that will help set the course for the future and provide a roadmap for the community as the board moves forward with our goals, our objectives, and our capital projects. We thank the Board of Selectmen and the RTM for their support of the new Oxford Elementary School, and we've been encouraged by the strong work of the Building Committee. This is the type of thoughtful collaboration that Darien can engage in and be proud of. The board is beginning to plan for the removal of portables across the district. These temporary solutions have stood in place for far too long, in some cases pushing 30 years. And in today's changing world, with the concerns of safety and security and educational best practices, the time has come. Students are always our top priority. We plan for all children and their educational needs. It is our job to educate children as they come to us. And it is important to remember that all students are general education students first, and those that receive services do so in order to access their education. At a recent legislative breakfast, student identification is rising across almost all districts, and it is a reality. At a recent legislative breakfast, Dr. Adley and I, along with many of our Fairfield County districts, implored our state representatives to look again at the appropriate funding mechanisms for education and specialized grants for student services. The complexities of the federal and state fundings are detailed and can be unpredictable. I believe that once again this year you will hear robust conversations related to funding and especially the excess cost reimbursement. As we head into budget season, I leave you with a few overall thoughts. Budgets engender important practical and philosophical debate, and it is true that the school budget is a large portion of our overall tax base. However, our schools are an essential community service. Robust, strong schools are a generational investment. They drive our residential real estate markets and related commercial economic growth. Our schools help make Darien a destination, a place where families grow, graduate, and as many of you know, return. Our last 3 years of budgets have shown the smallest percentage increases compared with recent history and compared to many other mill rate impact areas. We carry no debts or surpluses. Any unused funds are returned to the town for the benefit of the overall town well-being. As a community, we have a proud tradition of delivering financially responsible and educationally sound budgets. It is our calling card. We support our counterparts on the town for bringing forward innovative and thoughtful initiatives, and we will continue to do the same. And we look forward to working with you to keep Darien vibrant and our children's futures at the forefront of our decision-making. On behalf of the entire Board of Education I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, wish you a very happy holiday season, and look forward to engaging you in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. I would expect that the education contract will be on the agenda in January for us to pass. Now the Chair of the Board of Finance, John Zagrodzki.
Only one person's block?
Let's not start, we've got to go back.
While we're waiting for the technology, it's really great to see all of you here again. I'm sure everyone is excited about yet another Board of Finance presentation. I think next time we'll actually charge admission, maybe a little pay-per-view, and retire some of this debt. Okay. I'm going to show a lot of blank screens. This is going to be kind of a 22nd century presentation. Thank you. So, as I did last year, I'm going to speak extemporaneously to some of these slides and try to bring a few old concepts back to you and give you an update, but also talk about a few new things I wanted to bring to everyone's attention in terms of some analyses that I've been thinking about. So what I'd like to do is start with the same framework I used last year, which is to take a look at where things have been, take a look at where things are currently, have a few thoughts about what's next, and then wrap up with some comments on budget guidance as well as some concluding thoughts. So the first chart I want to show is an update of the one I showed last year. This is a chart showing how town expenditures have grown over the last several years. This includes all expenditures for the town, which is both the town, Board of Education, our capital expenditures, as well as our debt service. And what you can see here, and I've divided it up a little bit differently into sort of two phases over the last year since 2011. And what you see is we had more rapid growth in town spending in the early part of this slide, but more recently it's been moderated from what we've seen in the past. So what you see from here is that we continue to spend more, but we're spending a little bit less than we have been in terms of seeing increases in total town spending. If you break this up into the various components that I just mentioned, what you see is that the Board of Education is moving along a little bit more quickly than the other areas, especially the town, which has really kept, I think, a tight lid on spending. The other two topics here are for completeness. On debt service, it's a general policy of the Board of Finance to try to keep level debt service, and we do that by changing how the debt is structured and thinking about repayment schedules such that the impact on the town taxpayer is maintained at a fairly level load, irrespective of the changes in overall debt for the town. And then finally, when you see capital expenditures down there, keep in mind that this is not all capital spending. This is just the capital spending that we're paying for directly out of the town budget as opposed to through bonding. So every year there's some of that. Typically, this capital spending is for smaller projects, things that don't rise to the level of needing a long-term bond or debt instrument to pay for it. Similarly, with last year, what we're seeing is very slow shifts in what I would call the mix or relative spending in the town. So what you see here is the town spending from 2016 to 2019 set up on a 100% basis so that you can see the relative shifting in spending. And as we've seen over the last few years, the Board of Education's spending is rising as a percentage of total town spending. It's just a little bit over 2/3 right now, whilst the other units of the town are falling slightly. And this is simply because the Board of Education's increase in spending has been modestly higher than what we've seen in other aspects of the town's budget. So this is a chart that Steve showed. This is a little bit more detail on the grand list. So what you see here is the taxable value of properties on the grand list, broken out by residential and commercial. So the basic message of this chart is the following. One is that It's a fairly flat grand list lately. It's been growing a bit more, but you'll note that we never have fully recovered from the drop-off following the crash in 2008 in terms of grand list value. This grand list does not include the most recent valuation, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what those numbers are, and we'll try to get that out to everyone soon. But as you can see here, we just really have not recovered in terms of grand list value. I noted there was one interesting thing on Steve's slide, the valuation that took place before the one that you see here in 2015 when we had the great spike right before the crash. There was a huge improvement in values, and frankly, there were a lot of that in the years before, but we, as members and residents of this town, just have not seen that in quite some time. So just keep that in mind when you think about town spending and the need to keep that under control, that we're just not seeing growth in grand lists like we've seen in the past. There's one interesting thing, though, that I want to talk a little bit about the grand list, and I've not talked about this before, and I want to illustrate this and show you something I think that's important to keep in mind. And that's this notion of the shifts in the value in the grand list. So one of the things you may have heard of is, well, if I think about real estate prices in town, what I'm hearing is that the value of the very highest end properties, the most expensive properties, the value of those properties has been weaker. The properties don't sell as much, a lot of discounting to get those properties to move, versus the properties that are of lower value. And what you see in this chart, this is a comparison between, let me get out my magnifying glass, 2013 and 2018. And so what you see here is that the value of houses in those top two quartiles, the ones that are the most expensive houses in town, the relative value of those houses is lower as a percentage of the total than it was in 2013. And that kind of confirms the hypothesis that we've had, which is the value of those houses has just fallen a bit more than maybe the value in the lower quartile houses. Okay, so what does this mean? When you have a shift in value like that, if you think about the total grand list, we've got to tax against that grand list to pay for all the spending. And so if there's less value in a couple of quartiles and more in a few other quartiles, that means that the lower quartile houses have, on a percentage basis, more of the value, and therefore they're going to have to pay more of the taxes. And that actually has real impact, as I'll show on this next slide. So take a look at this. What you see on the left, going down from quartile 1 to quartile 4, is this notion that I'm talking about. So you look on the left two quartiles there, quartile 1 and 2. What you see is that if we run an experiment, we say between these two grand lists from 2013 and 2018, let's make this assumption and say we're just going to have flat spending, right? So our most recent budget, $144 million. We'll assume flat spending, exact same amount of money being spent in both years. But we're going to tax the two grand lists of those 2 years to come up with the taxes to pay for it. And what you see here is that in quartile 1 and quartile 2, if you had just the same spending for those 2 years, in 2018, the residents, the houses in those two quartiles, they pay less taxes. The tax that they have to pay to support the $144 million budget is less. That also means, though, that the bottom two quartiles, quartile 3 and quartile 4, they're paying more in taxes. So what does this mean in terms of numbers? What you see for quartile 1 is that on average, for the average home in that quartile, which has a value of $3,018,000, they pay on average 2.7% less in taxes for the same budget, same $144 million, than they paid in 2013. Similarly, for quartile 2, average house price of $1,465,000, they're paying 1.6% less. And then we look at quartiles 3 and 4. Quartile 3 is paying 1 point something, which I can't read, hold on, 1.4, and then the bottom quartile, think about this, this is the lowest value homes in the town of Darien. They are paying more than 8% higher taxes for no change in spending, okay? So one of the things I want to do in the budget process that's coming up, and I'm going to replicate this analysis each time so that when we look at what we're spending, we're not just looking at a mill rate increase, we're going to break up that mill rate increase so that everybody has a sense for, okay, given the changes in the grand list, what does that mean for taxation by quartile, not just overall for the town? I'm not trying to set up competition or create problems, but I think it's important that we keep this value shift in mind, because even though we might say we've done a good job at keeping taxes flat, the reality is that may not be true for every quartile. So keep that in mind as we go into this budget cycle. My message has been consistent over the years, and it's consistent today. It's very important that we pay close attention to spending. It's not just at budget time, but in every activity we engage in. I encourage everybody who has a role in this to make sure that we scrutinize that and ask that question. Do we need to spend that money, and are we doing so in the most efficient manner possible? So reiterating what Tara said about Board of Education spending, I won't go into any more detail other than to point out one thing. This is the same chart that has Board of Education expenditures per student. As Tara mentioned, we are still quite competitive with Durgay spending on a per student basis at $21,000, same number that she repeated. But one thing I'd like to point out is that if you again split this chart into two pieces, the growth in spending for Board of Education per student actually has moderated over the last few years. And the reason for that, I believe, is because we addressed a lot of special education deficiencies in the years prior to this, and as that spending layered in to correct those problems, eventually it started to moderate, and that's why you see lower percentage increases now over the last few years recently. A couple comments on debt and debt service, and we'll expand on this when we get into some of the new projects that are going on. What you can see is there's been a fairly good pace of debt repayment in the town. We paid it down from a high of nearly $100 million in 2012 to something closer to $60 million today. We have set up our debt repayment schedule to be relatively aggressive, and we take good care of trying to make sure that that is not something we defer, but we continue to focus on. And you can see what our annual debt service costs look like in terms of principal and interest right below that. One thing you'll notice is something I pointed out before, which is we do try to keep our debt service fairly level so that even though the town debt is dropping, you can see that the town debt service, at least over the last few years, is within a zip code of being relatively consistent. Finally, fund balance. This is something I've talked about before. As a refresher, fund balance is kind of like our rainy day fund or emergency fund. It's important for a few reasons. If there's ever a major problem and we need money, the fund balance is available for us to tap. It's also a good thing to have because ratings agencies look at that as one component of measuring town health, town financial health. And so they like to see that at a particular level. We recently updated the town's fund balance policy and took a close look at that and thought about it in the context of what we need to have to satisfy ratings agencies. We came up with a floor of about 12% of what we're calling budgetary revenues. We changed the metric, which I won't get into. This one's a lot simpler. And you can see over the last couple of years that we're quite a bit above that ceiling, and I'll get into how we're trying to correct that. But what you want to do is kind of have a Goldilocks approach to this, not too much, not too little. We want to have a number that makes sense for the town, that is a prudent reserve, that meets ratings agency requirements. But if we have too much, what does that mean? That means we taxed too much in a given year, and the money went into a savings account. Now, is that terrible? Well, maybe not, but one of the important things we have to do for budgeting is we have to make sure that there's what I would call intergenerational equity. In other words, I don't want to tax too much from current residents to pay for spending that we're not spending on those current residents today. That's not right either. So this one's come about, I think, for some unexpected surpluses. Last year it had to do with excess cost reimbursement being higher than we expected. This year it's actually spread out among a number of things, from conservative estimates of revenue to simply lower spending by both the town and the Board of Education than what we budgeted. So we'll definitely look at it this year and try to tighten all that up, but you can see it's a problem in the sense that it does represent too much taxation in those particular years, but I'd rather have this problem than the other one. Okay, a couple of observations, and I'm going to have to look at this. Hold on. Yeah, it is, as I said, I think a fairly stable financial picture over the last few years, not certainly anything that I am too worried about, and it's not just in terms of spending, but it's also in terms of our balance sheet around debt and fund balance. I'm worried about this shifting tax burden. I've talked to a number of folks who have said, gee, it feels like we've got spending under control. Why are my taxes so much higher? And this analysis is starting to show why for those constituencies. And it's not something that we can really change if we're going to have a flat or single mill rate to apply to all properties. I mean, the reality is that even though those folks are paying more, the folks at the higher end are paying less, but they've taken enormous haircuts on the value of their houses. And as a conceptual matter, fair's fair. I mean, they've lost a lot of value in their house, therefore they should be paying less in taxes. And so it's going to be a struggle, I think, for us to think about that, particularly if that trend exacerbates over time. I don't know how that's going to play out, but now that I've got this analysis up, we're going to pay attention to that going forward. So as I said before, I think I can confirm my conclusion from last year, which is that the town is well managed, both in terms of town spending as well as our education spending, and I think it's being done so in a fair degree of prudence. So let me turn to today's finances. I'll talk a little bit about our budget from last year. So what you see here, without pretty colors, which I know you're accustomed to seeing, but a few charts, we'll get back to those. So this chart just breaks down the town revenues and the town expenditures and shows you that we had this $2.7 million surplus last year. So think of that. We ended up with a $2.7 million surplus. All of that went into fund balance, which again is a good thing. But as you can see, the sources of that, what I would call outperformance, comes from several areas. It's a sort of lower than or higher than budgeted tax revenue, which is a good thing. Lower than budgeted expenditures, kind of across the board, with the possible exception there of CapEx down at the bottom, which is a small number. But it's pretty consistent outperformance across the board. And again, nice problem to have, but I do intend to try to take a closer look at our budget process this year, just to see if we can get a little bit more precise. I'd rather have something that's closer to budget rather than off budget. It just means that we're doing something wrong with our budget. You're supposed to get it right, both on the high end and on the low end, so we'll try to do a better job this time around. In terms of our current budget, the 2019-2020 budget, actually everything looks pretty good right now. I don't see anything that would suggest that we're going to materially under or overshoot that budget, except for one thing that we've tried to do to address the fund balance problem. So you'll see next to the starred amounts, this $2.2 million amount. The idea there is that we would take some of our existing bonding, which was eligible for what we call redemption, and simply redeem them. So we took $2.2 million out of fund balance. We redeemed that debt. That was the work of Jim Palin, who's an expert on all these municipal debt matters, and I'm quite thankful for that. But under his leadership, we worked out with Jennifer and others supporting us a plan to actually retire some of that debt. So we pulled $2.2 million out of the town's debt, reduced town debt service in the zip code of $50,000, but importantly, it reduced that fund balance to try to get it a little bit closer to the number that we really want to have. So again, in the spirit of trying to take that surplus and get the impact of that surplus as close as possible to the taxpayers who paid it in the time that they paid it, this was the best thing that we had to come up with, and it enabled us to do it in the current fiscal year as opposed to waiting. So that's just an example of what we're trying to do to manage the town's balance sheet as well as spending and taxation. So in terms of capital projects, I'll comment just briefly. We've had some recent capital projects, the Public Works Garage, the cafeteria expansion, and some turf field replacements that you can see there. We also have a number of projects ongoing right now, from the Oxbridge school replacement to the other ones that you can see listed here. I'll comment first on the ones that have completed. All of these projects, with the exception of the turf field, the first two had building committees attached to them. You'll recall that the building committee idea was created by Jamie to really give us a vehicle, if you will, to help us better manage projects when we had some difficulty in the past. And I would attribute the surpluses from those projects to that structure that we put in place. And so you can see that for the most recent projects, we've had more than $600,000 in surpluses versus what I thought were reasonably tight budgets on those projects. And that's a good thing. In terms of our current projects, I guess the only thing that I would point out there is that some of you have probably heard that some initial estimates on the Oxbridge Elementary School have come in high. This body approved a budget and appropriated a budget of $63 million for that recently. We've had estimates come in from our initial architects and planners that are $10 million north of that. I'm sitting on the building committee, and I don't see at this point that we're not going to be able to get that back down to $63 million, but we're going to be pretty careful about that. I don't want this notion of value engineering that we've had on prior projects that resulted in suboptimal construction or construction that did not meet our long-term needs. I don't want to see that. So while I would love to get this back down to the $63 million, if in my judgment we have, quote, value engineered the project towards something that's suboptimal that we're going to have to spend money on in 10 years, I'm going to come back to this body and I'm going to tell you what I think and ask you to spend more money on it. But right now, all I can tell is that we should be able to get back to the $63 million and still have a project that we can look at that says that project's going to go into the future and it's going to be fantastic and we won't need to spend any money on it. And then the only other point that I'll raise is on the Pear Tree Point Beach project. That's been a project with a fair degree of controversy. I don't need to remind this body of that. The only thing I'd say about it is that I thought it was a good idea for Jamie to pull it so that we could have further public consideration of that. My main objective there is not around what the decisions are to redesign that property. That's not the purview of my board. But I will say that I don't think it's right for the town to defer maintenance on anything. Part of the reason that we're here is not just the schools, as Tara said, but because we have a really great physical property to live on. This is not just a great location, but we've done a great job at maintaining all of our facilities. As painful as it was, for example, to spend $6 million on a public works garage or all the money we spent on the police station, we have to maintain those facilities. It's important for the long-term health of the town to do that. So whatever the answer is on Pear Tree Point, if you go down there, it's up for some kind of renewal, and we need to spend the time and effort to get that renewal just right. So just a couple of perspectives on the teacher's contract that you guys will be considering next month, I believe. The headline amount of that contract says that there's an increase in the cost associated with the compensation for those teachers of north of 11%, compounded over the 3 years of that contract. That's about 3.6% per year, or in that zip code. And it's a combination. Reason it's come out as high as it has is that it's a combination of what we call step increases, which are the increases that you pay as you advance in tenure, and then it's wage increases, which you get as a result of really simply inflation from year to year. And I'll show you a quick example of that in a minute. But it's also a result of a relatively high number of people that we have in the lower ranks where they benefit from step increases, as opposed to the very top rank where you don't get such a benefit. This was a pretty complex process. Lots of people were involved, as Tara said, both professionals as well as elected officials. They wrestled with this for a long time. Is it the least expensive contract we could have negotiated? No, it's not. Do I think it's a reasonable contract? I do. I'll have more to say about it when you all convene. Even though the Board of Finance does not have a role in the approval of that contract, I certainly will speak out in more detail in the future about what I think is something you should support at that time. The one other thing that I would say is that something that makes these types of contracts effective, and this is a general comment on really anything we do in town, is to get a number of good folks together to try and come up with the best answer possible. And it's a combination of professionals who do this for a living, as well as appropriate town officials who can sit down and weigh in and help us make some of these choices. I think we had that this time. I think we could actually do more for future contracts. And so we're going to make sure that that collaboration is tight and productive in the future, even more so than it is today. This is the worst math that I'll show today, but what this is intended to do is to try to give you an idea of why this contract was expensive. So this is just a little carve out of a little piece of the table that actually shows how these increases work. And so what you see on here is, on the far left side, are these steps that I referred to, and they start, I think, at 2 or 3, and they all go all the way down to 19. So each year that you're here as a teacher, you advance a step. Okay, and each one of those steps has a value or a percentage increase until you get to the 19th step, and it stops. So you don't get any more step increases after that. And so that's reading from the top down, say from step 15 to step 19. Then you see from left to right, that's what we call wage increases, and that really is intended to reflect inflation, if you will. And so most of the steps have sort of a 4 to 5% increase. There's one big step increase right towards the end as you get to step 19, and then it stops. And the inflation increase from left to right is 0.5%. So what you see here is that a teacher that moves from the current to the new, or just, for example, moving from one period to the next period, gets a combination of step increases and wage increases. And so that's that diagonal line that you see where they're advancing 1 year in tenure, but that year increase also has value. So part of the reason that the demographics, when people talk about this, why those demographics worked against us on this contract, against us, I don't mean to be negative about it, is that we have a lot of teachers that aren't at the top step, right? And so they benefited from both the wage increase as well as the step increase, whereas the teachers at the very top of the wage scale, they would only get a wage increase, and the negotiated amount in the contract was 1.5%. So even though the headline amount of this contract seems high, the reality is that if we had all the teachers at the very top step, the increase would only be 1.5% per year. That's a pretty good deal, except for the fact that all those teachers would be at the very top end of the compensation scale, so our average teacher cost would be much, much higher. The only reason I'm saying all this is that these contracts are extremely difficult to negotiate. There's a lot of moving parts. There's strong negotiators on both sides. There's non-financial aspects of this that impact the finances or the financial impact of the contract. And so as you study this and come to a point of view as to what you'll vote for in January, I'd urge you to spend some time trying to understand those various components. Reach out to members of the Board of Education or the administration to get clarity, but make sure you cast an informed vote on that. I think you'll come to the conclusion that I've come to, which is costly, yes, unreasonable, no. So current situation, quick observations, welcome surplus from last year, which I like. I think the current budget, as I pointed out, is clearly on track and good enough that we can use part of fund balance to reduce our debt load, which you've already done this year. I think all the capital expenditure programs and projects are on track with possible turbulence both in the elementary school as well as Pear Tree Point, but we got a lot of smart people working on those things, so I think it will turn out quite well. And then finally, like I said, fund balance is in very good shape, and so much so that we could use it to pay down some debt. I don't have any major concerns or worries at the moment. Finally, a last couple of things here. I put down here a baseline forecast. It shows more than 5 years, but anyway, about a 3.3% increase over time, and Jennifer helped develop these slides. It's a combination of a variety of things, including projections of town wages, expenditures in town, latest Board of Education forecast, all of that. The one I did want to point out down at the bottom is you can see how we're anticipating layering in the debt from the Oxbridge building project. It'll certainly grow our debt from where it is currently, around $60 million, with $53 million being the forecast for next year, and growing it back up to nearly $90 million as we borrow the money to finish that project over the next couple of 3 years. And that's okay, because we've paid down debt before and we'll pay it down again. But this is an asset that if you visited it, you'll be quite convinced that we do need to tear that entire thing down and just start completely over. So I think we'll get there in terms of $63 million, hopefully, but you can see how that's going to impact our debt going forward. We'll do our best to keep the debt service from that level, but we will incur more debt in order for that to work out. I'll be quick on a few crystal ball comments that I just wanted to make. One of them is all this talk of all these fantastic facilities and this wonderful downtown and all this new housing and all the affordable housing, and don't forget the beach and the great commute to New York City, and oh, by the way, student enrollment is going to drop. I'm not a professional. I'm not an expert at estimating student enrollment. Something doesn't sound quite right, so I would just wanted to put out a stake that says I'm not quite convinced that we're going to see this sort of slow, steady bleed of students from Darien with all the factors that I just mentioned. I think that these union contracts were relatively expensive, as I've described in my 3.3% annual increase in total spending for the town over the next few years. We could start to see those numbers creep a little bit higher because of the cost of these contracts, and I think we just need to keep that in mind. I talked a lot last time about what's going on at a state level. I'm still a little bit nervous about that. If you look at the math that comes out even from the new administration that took over last year, I still don't see how they actually resolve some of these problems without finding some generosity in municipalities that are a bit more well-heeled. And so I throw that out as just a reminder that the prospect of that is still lurking out there and that we need to keep it in mind. And then finally, The good news is that the estimates that I just showed have not taken into account the tax revenue of all these new projects that Steve discussed. He said about $12,000 for every $1 million in valuation. We heard $120 million for the first one, $40 million for the Palmers. I didn't hear one for Corbin, but assuming that takes it all up to $250 million bucks, we could see easily another $3 million or so in tax revenue from the town for those particular projects. I'd remind you, by the way, that doesn't include the secondary effects that you might have on residential real estate just because the town looks a lot better. And I actually think that there's a prospect for that too. So I'm quite optimistic about those projects as sources of real town revenue in the future. Long-term management philosophy, I really just wanted to put these down as a reminder of something that I had from last year. I'm going to point out again this middle box, which I think is the most important thing. It's important that I think we spend most of our time on things that really do matter, things like teachers' contracts, getting major building projects right, all of that. The stuff that's really small, we really should leave the town professionals to deal with that and only intervene when we see something that seems completely unreasonable. As I've said in speeches in the past, headcount growth and capital project management, I think, are the most important things we can do to maintain the financial health of the town. Finally, just in terms of budget guidance, this actually chart was pilfered, unchanged from my presentation last year. I don't think the guidance in this has changed, and I'll just reiterate it. I think as a starting point, we should try to keep all our spending for both the town and the Board of Education at less than 3%, and that we ought to have an active discussion if we think the numbers need to be higher than that. And then finally, just a couple of concluding thoughts. I would echo Tara's encouragement to all of you. If you've not had a chance to meet Dr. Hadley, he's a terrific professional, very insightful and a lot of fun to be around, and I think he's going to make a terrific impact on this town, and I'd certainly encourage you to do that. The only other reminder that I would throw out to our beloved friends in the Board of Education and the administration, as I said last year, this OpenGov software that this town invested in is an excellent tool, not just for budgeting, but providing transparency to town spending for constituents in this town, and I would certainly encourage the new administration to give that due consideration. Donna has received accolades today, and I was going to kind of do that in this speech, but as much as she deserves it, I'm not going to do that more other than to say that a thank you needs to go to all town employees. I'm regularly impressed by the talent that we see there that are supporting volunteers like me. It's fantastic. Some of you may not interact with those folks, but they really are amazing, and I think deserve our thanks. And then finally, I'd like to reiterate some support as my last comment for something that Jamie and the Board of Selectmen have undertaken, which is a statement of community values. Our contribution as a Board of Finance to that was to emphasize the importance of civility and collaboration among all the town boards as we work to negotiate the various things we have to do in the town for financial as well as overall health for the town. And I think an effort to put that in writing and to get that as a stake in the ground for all of us to consider when we deal with each other, I think is pretty important. That's all I have to say. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, John. Entertaining as always. OpenGov, Tara. Oh, never mind. Now, the first selectman, Jamie Stevenson.
How's everybody doing? You need to stretch your legs? How's the Darien football team doing? We won? Oh, awesome.
I thought everybody was concentrating.
Well, good evening, everyone. Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, fellow elected officials, and everyone watching from home on TV 79. I'd like to recognize our newest RTM members. If you're brand new to the RTM, will you please stand up so we can put a face to you and welcome you officially to the RTM? Come on. Awesome. Thank you very much for your service. And Donna, we love you so much. Thank you for all of your years of dedicated service to the town of Darien. Please don't be a stranger. We are very happy to welcome Karen Diller as our new town clerk, along with all of the other newly elected officials, including my Board of Selectmen colleagues, Krista McNamara, Sarah Newman, and David Martin. We're going to have a great year with the depth of experience these folks bring to our work. I'm deeply grateful for the contributions of my former colleagues, Pam Sparkman, Mark Thorne, and Susan Marks, and we wish them well in their new endeavors. How fortunate are we that we have the best superintendent in the state of Connecticut, Dr. Alan Adley, here in the home of the Blue Wave. And Dr. Adley, wave back there in case people haven't seen you. Awesome. Your care and concern for our kids, our teachers, staff, families, and our community is already evident. And we know that your work with the Board of Education will redefine excellence in education here in Darien. Thank you for being here. And speaking of the Blue Wave, although it wasn't our year for the Turkey Bowl, Darien did win the Most Generous Community Award after beating New Canaan in the Battle of Giving between the Darien and New Canaan Community Foundations. Way to go, team. Tonight, I address you for the 9th time as your first selectman. Thank you for continuing to put your trust and faith in me to captain our team, both here at home and on the regional and state levels. I appreciate this annual opportunity to share with you our notable accomplishments and to frame our goals and challenges ahead. Over the past year, the Darien Police Department has been transformed by the retirements of Chief Ray Osborne and Captain John Lawler, and the promotions these retirements facilitated. On September 2nd, after 36 years with the Darien Police Department, Captain Don Anderson became the 11th Darien Chief of Police, a job his father, the late Bruce Anderson, held from 1988 to 1993. Don and his father are not the only father-son team to serve in the Darien Police Department. In June, 23-year veteran Jeremiah Marin Jr. was promoted to the rank of captain, the same position his late father, Jeremiah Marin Sr., held in the 1980s. Lieutenant Bob Shredders was promoted to captain, and Sergeant Allison Hudemo was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, becoming the first woman lieutenant in the history of the Darien Police Department. That's very exciting. I'm very pleased to share that several years of collaboration between the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, and the Darien Police Department has resulted in the placement of a school resource officer at Middlesex Middle School. School, community, and cybersecurity are priorities for the Board of Selectmen, and we stand ready to work with the district and through our shared IT service model on best practice security measures. We now have 6 civilian dispatchers, giving us full civilian coverage for day and evening shifts. The goal of hiring professional telecommunicators was to put sworn officers out on parole. Oh. That's good. Out on patrol. Are you listening, Don? And to facilitate the placement of an SRO in the middle school, and to dedicate an officer to narcotics investigations. I believe we succeeded in 2 of those 3 objectives. On behalf of the Darien Police Department, I want to remind you to lock your cars. I think I said this last year. Car burglaries and thefts continue to plague our town. This problem is not unique to the town of Darien, but leaving your cars unlocked with your keys or your key fobs in them is just inviting crime into your neighborhoods. So please remember to take your keys inside and move the key fob to a place that it doesn't connect to your car if your car has a key fob. 2019 has been another very busy year for the Public Works and Parks and Recreation departments. Solar installations are complete on the roofs of the town garage, police station, and here at Town Hall. The Stony Brook River sedimentation basin adjacent to the Mather Center was successfully dredged this fall, and prep work for the new Town Hall generator has begun. Several town hall safety improvement projects are underway. You can see one right out here in our reception area. And as you can see from these design boards, schematic design for a new Norotan Heights train station facility is complete. Next steps on the train station improvement project are to receive the final draft feasibility study and meet with Connecticut DOT to outline our project partnership. And take a close-up look if you'd like to see the interior design renderings for this exciting project. Not quite as exciting, but equally as important, is the work underway to improve our sanitary sewer system. Some issues you'll be hearing about in the coming months are illicit connections, I, and fog. Darien's sanitary sewer system collects sewage and pumps it to the Stamford Water Pollution Control Authority facility for treatment. Darien pays Stamford significant sums for sewage treatment, and any excess water entering the system from illegal sump pumps and roof leader connections and groundwater infiltration adds to the capacity and financial burden. FOG stands for fats, oils, and grease that get into our sewer system from food establishments and cause blockages. If you're as fascinated about this stuff as I am, go home and Google fatbergs. But be prepared to be grossed out. We've hired a consultant for a multi-year project to help us find ways to reduce I and improve our sewer system. It's critically important that we do so. You've heard me say it before, if you don't have a well-functioning sewer system, little else matters. Phase 1 of the Eversource natural gas main and Aquarian water main installation projects are complete. Additional phases have not yet been identified, although we are exploring whether we can get natural gas to the new Ox Ridge Elementary School site to help realize significant energy savings. We're now in the 18-month natural gas customer connection period, after which, yes, we will repave the roads. Thank you for your patience. Kip Coons, Duke Deneen, and the entire Ox Ridge Elementary School Building Committee are doing an excellent job with a very complex construction project. Schematic design is nearly complete, and a robust value management process is underway to bring costs back in line with original estimates and the $63 million appropriation this body made. Installation of the permanent parking areas and walking path at Highland Farms will be completed in the spring. Our chosen contractor's schedule didn't allow for the project to be complete before the asphalt plants close this fall. As promised, we will be meeting with adjacent neighbors in the coming months to discuss landscape buffers, and we hope to install a pollinator pathway meadow on the property. Commercial development activities, as you've heard tonight, are in full swing. The Norotan Heights Shopping Center, AKA Palmer's, all the tenants have been relocated and groundbreaking is scheduled for this Wednesday. Site work and demolition has begun on the Federal Realty property. Norotan Heights Stop and Shop will close on December 19th. If you're a customer, though, don't despair. The company has made significant investments in their Goodwives property, and that will serve our community very well. While we eagerly await for the Corbin, Palmer, and Federal Realty projects to take shape, there is robust small business development happening in Darien. You heard some of them tonight. Just to name a few that maybe weren't mentioned: Anjou Breathing Space, Osteo Strong, Shoes and More, Orange Theory, my favorite, the two co-working spaces, Everwell and Haven co-working space, and the Royal Senior Housing Development Project hopefully will be ready for occupancy by the end of next summer. My colleagues across the state have heard about the great things happening in Darien. There's a real buzz about Darien when you get outside of our borders, so I'm very proud of that. We have our fiscal house in order. We fund our pensions. We invest wisely in our schools, our parks, our beaches, and we keep our infrastructure well maintained. We take care of those among us who need a helping hand, and we are mindful stewards of our environment. By the extraordinary efforts of the Advisory Committee on Sustainability, Darien has received Sustainable CT Bronze certification. And we got this awesome plaque this past week. I think that we have members of the Sustainability Committee here in the audience tonight. Would you stand up, please? Is Carolyn here? Carolyn Bade? Yes. Certification is awarded to participating towns that have demonstrated achievement in 9 different areas of community action. I won't read those. We received 210 points for 18 total actions. Our certification is effective until the end of 2022, giving us time to take our sustainability efforts to the next level. The Advisory Committee on Sustainability is eager to continue their work and have outlined opportunities and recommendations to guide the next phase of certification. Craig Flaherty, Kathy Finnegan, Carolyn Bain, and the rest of the committee and town staff deserve special recognition for their efforts. Jeremy Ginsburg played a very large role in the efforts to receive our certification. Thank you, Jeremy. The Board of Selectmen has made sustainability throughout town government a priority. I invite the Board of Education and all town businesses and agencies to partner with us on this effort. It's been another very busy year for Darien Parks and Recreation. Over 4,000 people attended the town fireworks, and the Darien Sport Shop tree lighting was fabulous in spite of the foul weather. Parks and Rec has successfully taken over the organization of these 2 beloved events, and as a result, they're better than ever. Program registrations are up 16% over the last 2 years, and staff continues to innovate on new program offerings for our community. Facilitated by the Darien Athletic Foundation and the Darien Community Foundation, a new cross-country running trail at the Diller property and the Darien High School is nearly complete, and plans are well underway for the Weed Beach Meadow and Trail project, which will finally integrate the short lane parcel into the park. These projects demonstrate the value of collaboration and public-private partnerships. We are very grateful to our generous community partners for their extraordinary work with us. And mark your calendars for this weekend for our 2nd annual old-fashioned holiday this Saturday, December 14th from 3 to 5 p.m. at Tilly Pond Park, and Christmas caroling on Sunday the 15th at 5 p.m. with the Friends of Gorham's Pond at 71 Goodwives River Road. 2020 is really going to be a fabulous year. We ring in our bicentennial birthday year with an opening ceremony here in the Town Hall Auditorium, on Friday evening, January 10th at 6:30. 60 Minutes correspondent, author, and Darien resident Scott Pelley will be our special guest. A reception in the Darien Arts Center will follow. Al Miller, Maggie McIntyre, and the entire 2020 Bicentennial Committee are working very hard to organize a wonderful year of activities in celebration of our 200 years of history. They need volunteers, and donations are welcome to help fund the celebration. The year 2020 gives us a great opportunity to look back not only at our history, but to reflect on opportunities we were wise enough to seize. As our community continues to debate the merits of the Pear Tree Beach Improvement Project, I'm reminded of when I first joined the Board of Selectmen. Our priority goal was to build a new senior center to more respectfully support the seniors in our community. Some of you will undoubtedly remember the repurposed elementary school, Hollow Tree Elementary School, that served as our senior center, a non-ADA compliant building with a leaky roof and child-sized bathroom fixtures. At the time, the program supported less than 250 seniors. This body debated and some passionately objected, but the project ultimately moved forward. Today, we have nearly 1,800 seniors who participate in Mather Center programs, and our center is the envy of the state. We're making a positive difference in the lives of so many seniors in our beautiful center under the direction of a highly skilled staff. My point in sharing this story with you now is that we must think about the future as we debate the best plan for Pear Tree Beach. Keeping an open mind, thinking about how we want to use this beach for the next 50 years, and understanding that Pear Tree Beach is a treasured town asset meant to be enjoyed by all Darien residents. It's essential to thoughtful planning. Let's work together and come up with a plan we can all be proud of. In 2020, the Board of Selectmen looks forward to collaborating with other town bodies on a community values statement, as you heard from John. This should be a guiding principle that will define the culture we wish to cultivate throughout our community, in our work, and in our interactions with each other. We will continue our efforts to make our town more pedestrian-friendly and to address our downtown parking challenges. And we must begin the conversation on the opportunities and challenges of 5G technology. Governor Lamont is committed to Connecticut being an early adopter of 5G wireless technology. There are significant land use implications, and I recommend we take a proactive approach to preserving local control over 5G infrastructure. The conversation about the economic development potential unlocked by 5G technology is overshadowing the health concerns of exposure to radio frequency fields. Senator Richard Blumenthal, in a hearing before the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee earlier this year, blasted the FCC and the FDA for failing to conduct research into the safety of 5G technology. WestCog is convening a 5G task force to help provide information to our member towns. I've had the great honor of serving as chairman of WestCog and the Southwestern Regional Metropolitan Planning Agency since 2017. My term will end in January 2020. I believe the town of Darien has been well served by my leadership and collaboration with my WestCog colleagues. I will continue to represent you in my capacity now as chairman of our municipal insurance agency, KERMA, and in my newly elected role as second vice president of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. WestCog is also facilitating a regional bike plan that includes a pilot project to develop a bike route providing connectivity from downtown New Canaan to the shoreline in Darien. The proposed bike loop is approximately 30 miles long and will connect other key destinations like schools, train stations, parks, trails, and recreational facilities. The deliverable will be an action plan that includes route, facility design, guidelines, and recommendations on how to complete the trail. The action plan should be available by the end of this year. Other notable work by WestCog includes the preparation of a comprehensive economic development strategy, a regional plan of conservation and development, identifying opportunities for voluntary service sharing between member towns. Jack Davis, you'll love this one, compiling a comprehensive municipal fee inventory, public safety consolidation for interested communities, and technical support for local transportation projects. There are several issues that are being studied that will likely appear on a 2020 legislative agenda. Tolls will probably come up for a vote in a January special session. The governor is holding municipal aid for road repaving and maintenance hostage to his proposed tolling, transportation, and infrastructure plan. The governor's new task force on transit-oriented development is focusing on, quote unquote, untapped economic potential in Fairfield County. That may include the development of state-owned rail station property, in other words, Norotan Heights and Darien train station parking lots, for affordable housing and commercial redevelopment. CCM has convened task forces to study alternative revenue sources to help offset the over-reliance on local property tax and solutions for the state and municipal pension crisis. A working group in the Office of Policy and Management is studying alternative methods of valuing our motor vehicles. I look forward to working with my fellow board chairs to keep you updated on proposed legislation that will impact our community as it begins to roll out. The November election was a great time to knock doors for me and to talk with folks about our community. It's wonderful to see so many young families choosing Darien as their home. Our schools and parks get high marks, and everyone is eager for the redevelopment projects to transform our commercial centers. Keeping property taxes low was a common refrain. They're counting on us to be good stewards of their tax dollars. I have to extend a very special thanks this year to the Darien Fire Commission for working with me to significantly reduce the audible fire horn noise. I don't know if you've noticed it yet, but I have. After years of discussion, a 90-day trial began on November 1st to limit horn use in an effort to improve the quality of living for folks living and working near our firehouses. And finally, a big shout out to our fantastic town staff who, with good cheer, keep the wheels of town government moving to make all of our lives just a little bit better. On behalf of the entire Board of Selectmen, I wish you a very Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, please rise. Thank you. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.